Good morning and welcome to our Earth Day Month program, Waste Management Update 2024. Sponsored by the Environment Committee, Bill Roach is the chair. After months of going through the waste recycle room refreshment, the Central Tower is now keeping pace with the North Tower and the West Wing. That part was easy, come on. The challenge to us now is to making sure that whatever that we can learn in whatever method that we use to learn to provide the opportunities to do that. We need to get better at sorting our recyclable materials, checking the materials that can be composted, and getting the smallest possible amount getting trained to Oregon for the landfill. A special welcome to our new residents who have yet to see one of our programs. This will be filmed. You'll be able to see it on HHTV. An extra special thank you for the Dr. What's. These are the volunteers on each of our floors for each of our waste recycle rooms who talk with residents, help them with sorting their waste disposal and finding then who to talk to if they don't know what to do with it. We're going to welcome our partners in this endeavor. Laura Clinch is here from Recology. See, they're not sitting in the order of my page. Sierra Arredondo is from Cedar Grove. She's going to remind us to take those pesky produce stickers off. And we've got Socorro, who's been here 9 years, and her compatriot, Ashley, from Seattle Public Utilities. And they're sort of make sure that we're doing the right thing with our waste. And then finale is our own EVS manager, Barbara Brown. And she's going to talk about what we can do beyond what we can do with our fellow workers here. We're going to hold the questions until the last half hour. We added that half hour to our normal 1 hour program, so we have plenty of time for Q&As. And we're going to start with Laura.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm Laura. I work with Recology. I'm on the Waste Zero team. I'm a Waste Zero specialist, and I specialize in multifamily in Seattle. So I work with lots of property managers to get resources to tenants. But yeah, I'm here to talk about recycling today. So Recology is a resource recovery company. We're headquartered in San Francisco. We serve over 130 communities around California, Oregon, and Western Washington. And yeah, so we haul recycling, garbage, and compost. And then we process the recycling at our MRF, our material recovery facility. That's the big green machine that you see there. So that's kind of our main business here in Seattle is our MRF, our recycling facility. But we service over 12 Puget Sound communities around the King County area. We also have a part of our company called Streetscapes. They're like, they go to events and make sure that all the waste is collected properly there. And they also do spill cleanups and graffiti cleanups around the city. We have retail storefronts, so I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's like a zero waste gift shop and hard to recycle material recycling center or drop-off center. And then we also do public education, so like what I'm doing right now. Overall, as a company, our mission is to send as little as possible to the landfill. So kind of an example of how we'll do that is we'll go visit a property and we'll see that maybe they have a really large garbage container, and then kind of they're collecting a smaller amount of compost and recycle. So we go in and we teach them how to sort properly, and why that's important. And then once they're sorting properly, they will be collecting a lot more compost and recycle as opposed to garbage. And this is also good for the wallet, because garbage disposal is a lot more expensive than recycling and composting. In most of our communities, picking up your recycle is free, so that's a really great incentive. So going into what can be recycled, so we've got glass, metal, so that can be cans, aluminum foil, any sort of small scrap metal, rigid plastics, and then paper products. So that can be paper, cardboard, milk cartons. Tetra Pak is technically it's like a kind of paper material. It's actually mixed with like a plastic coating, but our paper recyclers can process that. So these are kind of the main things we want to see going into the recycle. Some common contaminants that we don't like seeing are the big one, plastic bags and plastic film. We don't want that to go into the recycle bin because it gets caught in our machinery at the MRF. Small plastics, so the plastic straw and those plastic utensils you see, it's technically a recyclable material, but the items are too small to be processed at our sorting facility. And then that smoothie cup there, that you can see there's still some smoothie in there, and it's like coated in smoothie. The issue there is that not only is that specific item to food soiled to be recycled properly, but that smoothie can spill onto our paper products at the MRF and then make it so like a whole load of like paper per se wouldn't end up being recycled because it'd have smoothie all over it, might get moldy, the fibers break down. So we don't want to see any sort of food soiled items going into the mixed recycling. And then that styrofoam food tray you see in the bottom corner, not only is it full of food, but it's styrofoam. So we can't put styrofoam into the mixed recycling. If you want to recycle styrofoam, you have to take it to a special place like the Recology store. And then we want to make sure that if there was food in it, that's dumped into the compost, wiped out, things like that. And then snack wrappers, those are garbage. Sharps have to be, of course, taken care of in a special way. Latex gloves, you want to make sure that if you're, using gloves and then you're going to just kind of quickly taking them off, that you're taking the time to make sure they're going into the garbage, not the recycle. And then that metal bed frame, that's an example of like a bulky item. So it's all metal, it's perfectly recyclable, but it's too large to be put into your commingled recycling bin. So we would either want to break that down into 2 feet segments or bring it to a transfer station. So this is why we don't want to see plastic bags and plastic film going into commingled recycling. This is what happens at our MRF. So that top photo there is an image of our spindles. It's one of the first steps in our sorting process. It's meant to kind of glide paper and lighter objects over the spindles, and then smaller, heavier objects fall through. But when plastic bags end up there, they get caught, makes it so those spindles don't function properly. And so every day after the MRF closes, someone has to go in there and cut out all of the plastic bags, and it's really dangerous and it's a waste of time. So we want to reduce the amount of plastic film ending up there. And then just a reminder again about liquids and food waste, keeping those out of the recycle, because it not only can cause mold, but it's just messy, can cause issues at the MRF. So here's just another reminder about how to recycle right. So everything has to be empty, clean, and dry. It doesn't have to be bone dry, and it doesn't have to be like sparkling clean, but we say we like things to be like at least 90% clean. So for example, if you had a carton of milk or a jug of milk, make sure that all the milk is out of it. if you can, rinse it out and then tip it over, shake it out. As long as there's not like a bunch of liquid coming out at that point, then it's fine to put in the recycle. Then if you had like a yogurt cup, if you're kind of using your spoon to get as much yogurt out of there as possible, at that point it's usually okay, but kind of, don't waste your yogurt, that kind of thing. So if you're eating all of it and kind of like scooping out as much as you can, that should be okay. And then, so if you're kind of out and about, say you got takeout, you're eating it at the park or something, you're not near a sink, so your plastic to-go container that is recyclable, it might be food soiled, might be greasy. If you don't have the means of like wiping that out or cleaning it, rinsing it, to the point where it's 90% clean, then we would rather that go in the garbage than contaminate the materials that are going to the MRF. So if you're unable to clean something out, just put it in the garbage. Okay, so lids and caps are kind of a big point of confusion. The basic rule is that if the cap is the same material as the container, leave them attached and put the whole thing in the recycle. So like with a plastic water bottle, keep the cap on. Obviously it has to be empty, but then that can go in the recycle. With metal cans, if you leave that lid attached a little bit when you're opening it, you can put that whole thing into the recycle. But if that lid or that top part of the can was disconnected and it's less than 3 inches, it would have to go in the garbage. So those two items are recyclable as they are. And then here's an example of like a glass jar with a metal lid. That metal lid is 3 inches or greater, so both of those items can be recycled, but they have to be separate because they're different materials. And then small metal caps, small plastic caps, they're usually attached to like a glass bottle or a plastic bottle. And so these items are less than 3 inches and they're a different material than the bottle. So they would have to be removed. The caps go in the garbage and then the bottle would go in the recycle. No shredded paper in the recycle. The shreds are less than 3 inches, so they don't get sorted properly, and they also just make a huge mess at our recycling facility. Again, no plastic bags or wrap, and don't bag your recyclables. If you do want to bag them, you can use a paper bag, but do not use a plastic bag to bag them. Ideally, everything should go in the bin loose. So just kind of an overview of our process. So recycling, it really is a cycle. It keeps the materials in the system to be used again instead of just going straight to the landfill. So if you put a plastic water bottle in your bin, we'll pick it up, we'll take it to the MRF. It'll get sorted out by the machine and also by the people who work there. And then we send it to our plastic recycler in like a big bale. And then they'll turn it into a new plastic bottle. So this is as of 2019. I know a lot of people are curious kind of where materials are going to be recycled, if they're actually being recycled, if they're being dumped into the ocean. That's not the case. So here in Seattle, we can proudly say that about 28% of the materials that you're putting into your recycle bin, they actually get turned into a new product here in Seattle. So that's really awesome. And then 38% stays in North America. 34% gets sent to Asia, but that's only paper and cardboard. So no plastics getting sent overseas. Here's some examples of what your items might turn into when you recycle them. So cardboard gets turned into a new cereal box, paperboard, paper towels, tissues, printing paper. Other types of mixed paper gets turned into paper towel rolls, new paperboard, detergent bottles. They get turned into buckets, frisbees, stadium seats, and this is not comprehensive. There's also, a lot of other things that they might be turning into. These are just some examples. Milk jugs get turned into play sets, plastic lumber, new bottles, other types of plastics get turned into dishware, brooms, all sorts of things. PET plastics, so plastic water bottles, they often get turned into like textiles or carpet. Then aluminum, that can get turned into like cars, beams, furniture, appliances, lamps, art, but also like your aluminum can, that can get turned into a new can infinitely. So aluminum is a really great thing to recycle because the value of it doesn't really degrade much when it gets recycled. Then glass can get turned into new bottles, jars, fiberglass. Here's a really great resource on the SPU website. So if you're ever confused about if something can be recycled, head over to the Seattle Where Does It Go tool. If you just type that into Google, it should come right up. And you just type in what you have and it'll tell you where to get rid of it properly. So here's a little bit about our Recology stores. So we have our Shoreline store, Bothell, Issaquah, and Burien. So it's a zero waste gift shop. It's really great. I would highly recommend visiting. I always do all my Christmas shopping there. So you can buy items that are made out of recycled materials, or they're made locally, or like you can buy in bulk. So you can buy bulk laundry detergent, but you can also bring items like these that are hard to recycle. Like you can't put them in your commingled recycle bin, but they can be recycled if you bring them to the Recology store. So textiles, batteries, small appliances, cooking oil, small propane canisters, empty, of course, styrofoam, bikes and bike parts, fluorescent bulbs, small electronics. That includes like Christmas lights. Yeah. So that's all I have, and I will pass it on to Sierra.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I feel like I learn something new every time I do one of these, which is exciting. My name is Sierra Arredondo. I have been with Cedar Grove for just over a year now. I'm the outreach coordinator, so it's my main role to connect with our customers to ensure that they know what's accepted in the food waste streams, back in the house with our custodial staff, our compost process, and why it's so important to make sure those streams are clean. Here's kind of an overview of Cedar Grove. Just a little background. We've actually been part of the recycling infrastructure here in Seattle since 1938. And it was in 1989 that the city asked us to start recycling organic waste. So that was exclusively just yard waste. And then we planted or created our first composting facility in Maple Valley. And then in 2004 is when they started asking us to start taking food waste. So we've been recycling organic waste since 1989. And on average divert over 350,000 tons of organic material every year, which is super exciting. We've since then introduced certified compostable packaging, which has allowed us to help our customers invest in materials that are tested to break down in the facilities, as well as created bag products too, and making sure that that compost is going back into the market. So the main overview of organics into the landfill, about 30% of what we send to landfill is organic material. And there's a lot of misconceptions that that material, no matter where it's going, is going to break down. That's not true at all. There's a picture out there of some carrots. I really wish I can find it. Maybe you guys have it. Do you have it? It's pictures of carrots that are completely black on the outside, but broken open, they still have that bright orange color that have been in the landfill for like 10 years. They do not break down, and this is because when material goes to landfill, it kind of sits there, it piles up on top, and the organic material is actually emitting a gas called methane, which is 25 times more likely to trap in heat than carbon dioxide. which is what you and I exhale. So because it just sits there and it piles up on top of some other things, there's no oxygen going through, which is not allowing it to break down properly. So the solution to this linear life cycle of our organic waste is composting, making sure that there's another life to our organic waste and reusing it, because there is so many benefits to our scraps. And I'll review these benefits here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about how composting works. There are lots of different types of composting. There's backyard, residential, and there's commercial. I will be talking about commercialized composting because we are a commercial composting company. We haul food waste on a grand scale, and we have, because of this, because of our piles and how large they are, the larger they are, the hotter they get, the more they can break down material. So we can take in a lot more material you could probably compost in your backyard, including raw meat, dairy products, solid fats, and certified compostable packaging. As I mentioned, just between our two facilities, we have two, one in Everett and one in Maple Valley, we divert over 350,000 tons of organic material, and that has been increasing significantly. I think this statistic was back in 2018. Organics recycling is required in the city of Seattle. However, just as of this year, it is now statewide required. So it's going to be expanding all across the state. It's going to go in waves. So a lot of businesses are going to be affected here in the next few years, which is really exciting for us. A lot of majority of what we compost is yard waste, and that's because we need a lot more yard waste carbon to create a healthy composting environment for our microbes. So a lot more yard waste to food waste. About 5% of what we compost is food waste, most of it coming from the city of Seattle, but we're excited for that increase here. Just kind of on average, when you compost material, it shrinks in size. So it ends up being around 200,000 cubic yards of compost. I think last year alone we did over 500,000. So just with the 200,000, that's about 8,000 dump trucks full of material, or about 60 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Here is our picture of our Everett facility. We've expanded just a little bit since this was taken back in I actually don't know when this was taken, about 10 years ago. So we have since added another row and expanded back here for our parking lot and have bigger compost piles. And you can actually drive up to our facility and buy compost over here. So it's only expanded just a little bit. Our process is really simple. It looks like a pretty simple process. It just looks like rows of compost, and it actually is really simple. All we're doing is grinding up the material, mixing it up, and piling it. And we really just let nature take care of the rest. The main thing that kind of makes this a little bit difficult is monitoring our piles, making sure they have enough oxygen, enough water. But let's talk about the process. So first, our truck will go and service one of our customers, just like Horizon House. Our containers are brown. The two universal colors for organics recycling and compost is brown and green, but we love compost, so we like to have all of our materials in our containers brown. So we'll service the container, and then we'll take it to our tipping building, which is that white building you saw there in the picture. This is where all the material, everything happens. This is the first initial phase. It needs to be dumped out, and we have a tipping building monitor that goes in and removes obvious contamination. So obvious contamination would be like black or white plastic bags, tires, big metal objects. Although we haul commercially to businesses, we are also a hauler for residential, or we are also a facility for residential haulers. So Recology or Republic will also haul to us as well from residential yard waste. And we have a running joke at our facility that if you can find it outside at your home, it will end up at our facility. So we've had propane tanks, grills, basketball hoops, lots and lots of items. So we need to have a monitor that goes in and removes obvious contamination. But we have found that a lot of the contamination actually comes from within the green compostable bags. And we don't have the bandwidth to rip open every single bag, so a lot of it will actually go through our process. So once we remove the obvious material and we get the green light that it's processable, we then mix it with carbon, with wood waste. As I mentioned, there's a specific kind of ratio for a healthy compost. It's 30 parts carbon, which is your wood, your waste, your dry leaves, your paper products, to 1 part nitrogen, which is your food waste and your greens and your grass clippings. So we need a lot more. So we have a pile of wood waste on deck, ready to just mix into that compost or into that food waste. Once it's mixed together, we then grind it all up. This is an essential part of the process because this is not what's happening at the landfill with the food waste. We need to make sure that it's being ground up into small bits so that oxygen particles can go through the material, and so the material itself, the microbes, the bacteria, can breathe. Although this is really essential, this is also a very detrimental step in our process as well, because if 1 glass bottle goes through that grinder, it'll bust into 1,000 pieces, and we do not have any metrics to remove glass. We have metrics to remove plastic, we have screens, we have fans, we have magnets for metal. We don't have anything for glass. So it is essential that we're making sure that our customers know exactly what's accepted in that stream. Because after it gets processed, we donate to schools, we work with farms, we work with parks. There's a lot of different ways this material is going back into the community, which is amazing, but we want to make sure we're safeguarding our stream and ensuring that it's a quality product. So after it's ground up, we then transfer it on a conveyor belt where it's then going to be lined up in our heaps. This is kind of a multi-step purpose. We're mixing the material, we're moving it to another location, we rehydrate the material because the only 2 things we add are oxygen and water. And there's a magnet all along this conveyor belt that pulls up hidden metals. So examples of that would be nails from the wood pallets, or metal cutlery from cafeterias, aluminum cans, anything that can be magnetized. We're able to pull up, which we then collect to be recycled. So once it's moved over, it then gets piled up into our massive heaps. So these are about 164 feet long, 10 feet tall, and 26 feet wide. They are very large, and it's important that they're large. As I mentioned, the bigger they are, the hotter they get. So after we pile them up, we then cover them with a Gore-Tex jacket. This is like a blanket. We're putting our piles to bed. This is the same exact idea of when you put a jacket on when you're about to go on a hike. The whole point is to keep your heat, your body heat in, and repel moisture, all the water. Because too much water can drown the bacteria in the food waste. And again, we need to get that pile very hot and consistently hot. As I mentioned, the only 2 things we add are oxygen and water. So we add water in through the piles. And all along these rows, all along the row, there are holes where we then push water back in. We collect and push water back in. And the only way we add oxygen in is every pile is backed up against a long cement wall. Or on the other side of the wall are these teeny tiny horsepower fans. They're about this big. And it is just enough power. We use very, very small amounts of power to add oxygen into our piles because the only thing we need is about 8% oxygen. How we monitor them is there's 2 probes on top of every pile. One is monitoring the water, one is monitoring the oxygen. As soon as that oxygen goes below an 8%, that fan will kick on and it'll balloon up. If you can kind of tell, that pile on the right is ballooning up compared to the one next to it. So it's getting some more oxygen. As soon as it hits that 8% level, it kicks off. And all of our material, all of our fans are powered by solar energy. So it's very, very efficient. We collect all of our water and we save as much electricity as we can. We're actually we're trying to utilize compost and the heat from compost to heat up water sources too. We're not fully there yet at our facilities, but at our farm, it's very exciting. So here's an overview of our phases. Just alone, this is now the first phase because we've had to add on an extra pile. But in the first phase alone, those piles sit there for about 28 days. Now for regulations, food waste has to sit there in the compost piles for about 3 consecutive days at 131 degrees. That's pretty much it. to pass regulations to be compost or to kill off all of the bacteria, the bad bacteria like salmonella in those piles. We take that process so much farther because we want to ensure that we're killing off all the bad bacteria, the weed seed pollen, the fertilizer from lawn care, and making sure that the only thing left is carbon and nitrogen and all the good bacteria. So just that first phase alone is 28 days. Then we move it over to our second phase, which is 14. Third is 14. And then the last phase is aging, where we take that jacket off and we age it for about 12 to 18 months. This is important because the material is too wet and it's too hot. So if you put that compost material on your garden after the 60 days that it's been processed, it'll look great, but it'll burn all your plants because it's too hot. So we need to make sure it dries out. When we move the material over, it is screened every time. So we're making sure we're filtering out small plastics. Example would be like the fruit stickers, which is so hard for us to screen out because they're very small and they roll up and they go through our screens. But some other items would be like plastic bits from a water bottle or from plastic bags or from food wrappers, snacks, film plastic. So making sure we're screening our material. After it ages, we screen it one more time before it goes onto the market. Every phase, every step of our process, the compost gets tested. This is really important because we want to make sure that it's not carrying anything like synthetic chemicals like PFAS or fertilizer or metal. So we test all of our compost before it even hits the market. And after our process, after our 60 days of processing and 12 months of drying out, it's this beautiful, dark, rich material, and it's dark and rich because of the nutrient content, and it goes back into the community in so many ways. Every school we haul for gets up to 10 yards of compost every year for free, just so we can make sure that the students are utilizing a product they help create. We also sell the product in bag and bulk. You can find it in Home Depot, Lowe's, and we have 6 bulk yards where you can buy it as well. So let's review what's compostable. Food. We accept all food, including bones, shells, meats, fats, solid fats, and post-consumer food waste, which is basically like your food scraps or whatever is left over. What we don't accept are liquids. So this is any kind of liquid, soda, water, what have you, and oil. And this is for a lot of reasons. One, if the material is too wet, it's hard for the microbes to have a healthy area or a healthy life. And 2, when our container or when our truck comes to service the container, it stabs it and it goes and it tips it over the truck. And if there's too much liquid, it will fall on the ground and create an environmental hazard. So that is one of the main reasons why we don't accept liquids. Next is food soiled paper. So this is your uncoated paper plates, napkins, paper towels, certified compostable packaging, greasy pizza boxes. Thing to keep in mind about pizza boxes. So we like to limit our cardboard intake because too much cardboard can clog our screens, which are vital to making sure we're screening our material. However, when cardboard is food soiled, has grease on it, it's food stained, correct me if I'm wrong, it actually shortens the fibers in that cardboard to where if it went through the recycling process, it couldn't be put back together the same way. So think like Tetris. So that's why, in order to divert it from the landfill and still make sure it's being properly recycled, we compost it. But all clean, dry cardboard should be directed to the recycling for the next best, highest use. One thing I do want to mention about the napkins, or paper towels, it really doesn't matter if they're bleached or unbleached. A lot of people are kind of worried about the chemicals in bleach that actually gets cooked out because it's so processed that it gets cooked out of our compost material. But if you use the paper towels for cleaning, like bleach, straight bleach right on the paper towels or cleaning products, that is what we don't want. Because if you think cleaning products, they are antibacterial, and our process is a natural microbial process. So it'll just kill all the good bugs that we want. And we also don't want any bodily fluids. Even though our piles get hot enough to cook off your germs from a Kleenex, nobody really wants to buy compost that has bodily fluids in it. So for that reason, we don't accept it. Lastly is certified compostable packaging. And this is a very hard thing to talk about sometimes because it is very confusing on what's accepted and what's not. Compostable packaging there's a long, convoluted discussion on what's accepted. However, just as of this year, there are new, well, back in 2021, but this year as well, there are new requirements for certified compostable packaging in the state of Washington. So our team are now promoting these 3 requirements from compostable packaging and correlating to what we accept based on these new Washington state laws. So the packaging has to have 3 identifiers. It has to be brown, green, or beige, or have a brown, green, or beige stripe or marking. This is because sometimes items look plastic, sometimes they're PLA. So if the PLA goes into the recycling, it will not break, or it'll break down, but it won't break down properly. It cannot be recycled because it's made to break down in a compost stream. Same thing, if plastic goes into the compost, it doesn't break down at all, and it's really hard for us to get all of the plastics out of our stream. So making sure it has a color marking, which are brown, green, or beige. It also has to say compostable on the item. Other verbiage, like biodegradable or earth-friendly, is prohibited. And that's because those words are very confusing. So it has to be brown, green, or beige, has to say compostable, and it has to have a third-party stamp of approval from a certifier. This is so that entities can know, the entities like facilities, know that it has been tested in a facility to make sure it breaks down. So 2 of our favorites that are most common in the state of Washington are CMA. CMA stands for Compost Manufacturing Alliance. They are our national certifier that tests products at our facility, so our packaging line, and BPI. I will say, just because something is plant-based does not mean it will break down in a compost facility. For example, this clamshell right here, it looks like molded fiber, right? And it has a BPI logo on it. BPI basically means that it's plant-based, like it came from a plant product. And it did, it came from sugarcane. That molded fiber material is called bagasse. However, this does not break down in our compost facility. This actually just catches on fire. So that could be potentially very dangerous for facilities that have piles that are 164 feet long and get up to about 180 degrees. So just because it's plant-based does not mean it'll break down. So making sure that it has all 3 identifiers, that it's been tested, that it's color coordinated with the law, and says compostable. May I have that? So I know you guys have done a great job investing in items. Like this is, before this year, this is a great item because it has compostable on it and it has BPI right on top. So this to me is PLA. It's a material that can break down. However, from a distance, PLA means polylactic acid, which is from a cornstarch. From a distance, it's really hard to tell if this is compostable versus plastic, right? So the main point is to make it easily identifiable. So this item should either be brown, green, or beige, or have a brown, green, or beige band to be fully compliant with the state law in July. Thank you. Hopefully with these 3 identifiers, it will take some time, but it's just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. This again is an example of why color matters. There are some cutlery here that is compostable, but if it's all black or white, it's really confusing for facilities and for consumers to know if it's been tested or if it's going to break down. So that's why if these were brown or green, we know that they are compostable per state laws, so we don't have to worry about them. This is a kind of a webpage of CMA, Compost Manufacturing Alliance. This is a great resource that our team uses. We go on their website and we type in the item number or the code or the brand to see if it's been tested. Not every material on the market has been tested yet, but it's always good to know and invest in things that have been tested. So it's just like easier for everybody. So let's review what's not accepted. No metals, and that's because metal and aluminum has such a high turnover rate. So it's really important to make sure that we keep those metals and aluminums in the recycling stream. No plastic of any kind, because it just cannot break down in our process. And there's plastics hidden in a lot of things, like tea paper or tea packages. Tea bags have microplastics in them. Receipt paper has a BPA coating, a thermal coating, which is chemicals. Tetra Paks, and film plastic. And lastly, glass. We have a zero glass policy because we really don't have any way to remove it from our process. So then let's briefly go over why it's so important that we're diverting this material and the amazing benefits of it. So one, monetary savings. As you mentioned earlier, recycling and composting is so much cheaper than landfill. And that's because for composting, there are no environmental fees. We're not taking away from the planet, we're actually adding to it. And with the MRF and with the composting facility, that acreage, that size of that facility stays the same. So you're not adding any land costs either. Whereas a landfill, those get bigger over time. Reduces landfill waste, so diverting, which is a great benefit. Creates more jobs. There are more jobs in the recycling and composting companies than in waste. And that's because you need people, you need manpower to help sort through things and help process the compost. There's a lot more positions, creating a lot more jobs. Reduces greenhouse gas emissions. As I mentioned, compost is a 100% natural process. Just like you are a natural being, the only thing you emit, is carbon dioxide. Compost is the same thing. The only thing it emits is carbon dioxide. Whereas if it went to the landfill, it would be emitting methane. This is my favorite thing to talk about because it's just so cool. But compost is actually being used to filter chemicals in stormwater runoff. And this is something that we found over time. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the chemical 6,6-PPD, which is coming off of our tires. It's been mainstream over the past few years. And in order to help our salmon, the life of our salmon, we wanted to see if compost could be some sort of temporary solution. And it turns out we were right with that theory. What it does, I'm not exactly sure the science of it, but it pretty much captures the chemicals, and because of the nutrient content and the natural nutrient like makeup of compost, it breaks it down to where it can eliminate the chemicals, filtering that water before it hits our salmon and our waterways. So that is super exciting. One of our biggest customers is actually Washington State Department of Transportation. Every time they build a road, they buy our compost to line the roads with it, to make sure that that water is being captured and filtered. Another thing, it regenerates aquifers, it reduces erosion. This is because compost has so much nutrients in it. It's giving back to the earth, which then actually helps our water cycles. It increases soil health because the nutrient content. It can completely replace chemical fertilizer and increase crop yields, and overall just creates a more sustainable community. So closing the loop is what we call our full circle stories. We love to close the loop with our customers. And lots of ways of how we try to do that is providing products that can be used on anything and making sure that compost is mixed in with that product. So we have like garden soil, we have potting soil, landscape mulch, and making sure that everything has a basis of compost to add nutrients into whatever you're trying to grow. Our full circle story is our farm out in Redmond. It's called Sound Sustainable Farms. We started it in 2017, and the whole goal was so we could show the community how amazing compost is. So we took 65 acres of fallow ground in Redmond. There was nothing growing for like 7 years, and returned it into full production just using our compost. 2017, we laid the compost in, we tilled it just a little bit. And then 2018, again, we laid the compost in, tilled it just a little bit, making sure we were removing weeds as we went. And now we have a full functioning farm growing so many different types of produce and certified organic, which is super exciting. Kind of an example of a full circle story, just to show you in a diagram. This is a salad that's from one of our customers, a restaurant that we service here in Seattle. Whatever is left over, whatever food waste is left over from that salad, then goes to the food waste container, which is then hauled by Cedar Grove and turned into compost. Once it goes through the process and is aged and tested, it then is sold to farms and other growers, just like Sound Sustainable Farms, our farm, which we then use to grow more food. And I love our process because we like to work with our customers to see what they want on their menu in the next year so we can grow it for them. Thus, creating food we then give back to our customers, creating a full circle story. So that's something we're really proud of, and just another reason why composting can be so beneficial if we are able to utilize that material. This is my last slide. I'll end here. Just some easy steps for you guys to make sure that you're doing things properly. And I know you guys all do a really amazing job out here. But we like to talk trash in the office, basically saying, keeping those phrases, it's okay not to know. When in doubt, find out. So utilize your resources to make sure that they're reaching out to the right entities to find out that information for you. And when in doubt, throw it out. As Laura was saying, if you don't have the resources to look up or clean out the material, look it up, or find out, if you have any doubts or if you cannot tell if something is compostable, we probably can't either. So we want to make sure that it's diverted from our stream. So when in doubt, find out. When in doubt, throw it out. Making sure you're investing in educational signage that captures what is on site here, so it's easy for tenants to make sure that they can find something on that signage and know exactly which stream it goes into. Investing in easily identifiable products, so there's less confusion. Keeping the container in a clean area, utilizing compostable bags. And then incorporating compost, because it's not just important to divert that material, it's important to use it. And lastly, promoting durables. Basically, use durables on site. Make sure you're using like metal forks or reusables, reusable coffee cups, because reducing waste is the main goal we're trying to do here. And then utilizing Cedar Grove. We are a resource for you. We field these questions all the time, and we're happy to assist in any way we can to ensure a successful composting program.
Thank you, Sienna. How's everybody doing? Good. All right. Okay. Well, I hope you can bear here with us a little bit longer, just to talk a little bit more about. We're going to talk about solid waste. My name is Socorro. I work for Seattle Public Utilities. I've been doing this job for 9 years, and what I do as my job is to, make sure that apartments, condominiums, and then retirement communities have everything they need to compost and recycle effectively. And I'm gonna let my coworker introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Whitley and I work with Socorro here at the apartment buildings and retirement communities just to help them learn more about how to properly sort their recycling and composting. So it's great to meet you all.
Okay, so this is what Ashley and I will talk about today, the overall solid waste system, and we'll tell you exactly what that is. We're going to discuss all about garbage, and then we're going to talk about the number one tip to help the environment. The number one thing that we can all do, and that is prevent food from being wasted. Okay, so we're talking about solid waste, and really what that means in Seattle is just compost, recycle, and garbage. Those are kind of the three flavors of solid waste that we have. And we try to make sure that the color of all our containers, all our flyers, all our posters, everything related to these containers or, streams. I think today you also heard about streams. That just means the containers, that everything related to the containers, it follows sort of like this color coordination so that when people just see a poster or a container, just by the color, they know what goes in there. That's our goal. That's our vision. We're not there yet, but that's where we're going. So here we have our green container, and which is the compost. And like Sienna said, some of the companies like Cedar Grove, their containers are brown, and so we also use brown here. But for Seattle Public Utilities and all our messaging to homes and residents, we normally use green. And we normally call it compost. Other names that are used is food and yard waste, organics. Some people call it organics. We like to call it compost just because that's what it's going to become. We want people to be thinking about the vision, like, okay, all your food waste, all your food scraps is going to be compost. Or red gold, or black gold, that's how people call it too, because it's so good. It has so many properties like Sienna talked about. Okay, and then our next flavor here is recycle. And that's blue. You saw all of Laura's slides and containers. Everything was blue, right? So that's our color for recycle. And then for garbage, we use black or we use gray. You can see either of those colors. So this is a little graphic here. I guess I should be using this. Sorry about that. Okay, this is a little graphic that talks about our solid waste system. And you can see here we have a house, and you can see there are 3 containers in front, right? So the blue one is the recycling. You can see here it's being picked up. It goes to a facility where it's separated, and then it's made into new containers, that new items. So this is kind of the branch or this is the side of the system that Laura described so well. On this side here, we have the green container. You could see it's being picked up when it's picked up from Seattle Homes, it goes to the transfer station first, and then from there it goes to a processing facility. It's made into this beautiful compost that is used to grow more food. So this is the side of the system that Sienna described for us today. And then, so we have the black container here, and those get collected by a truck. It goes to a transfer station, it goes into a train, and then it goes into the landfill. And Ashley and I will be describing today this side of the system here. And so this is how it works for Seattle Homes. For business, there's a little bit different, but this is how it works for Seattle Homes. So, at Seattle Public Utilities, we are one department of city government. We don't have the capacity or the staff to be like managing the whole system or to be in charge of the whole system, right? So what we do is we partner with different companies to provide solid waste services. So, for example, we have contracts with Recology and WM to provide residential collection of the 3 flavors of solid waste that we talked about. And then they also do the collection of garbage. And how it works is, if you look at that little map there, depending on where the business or the home is, that's who's going to be doing the collection. So in your case here in First Hill, Recology is doing the collection. So that's how that works. And then for businesses or large sites like yours, any company can collect recycling and food waste. So I wanted to go over this a little bit, just because your site has, I'm going to tell you what your site has. So you have residential garbage and recycling that Recology picks up on behalf of Seattle Public Utility, and then you have commercial food and yard waste that Cedar Grove picks up. And so you have a direct contract with Cedar Grove that does that collection. And, that works. There's different reasons why to do it that way. For example, in Seattle Public Utilities, we don't have food waste dumpsters. So if you need a dumpster, we cannot do it. So you go directly to the companies. Or if you need like collection on a certain frequency, there's like many reasons why that makes sense. But I wanted to go over this a little bit because depending on what type of service you have, is what list of items approved you have to be looking at. So if you have this type of system, then you look at the SPU list. But if you have a direct contract with a company, then the company is going to tell you, like, this is what we accept, this is not what we accept. So I just wanted to mention that because it has impacts on our collection list. All right, so since I started talking about what contracts we have, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the rest of our contracts. So we have a contract with Republic Services to sort our residential recycling. So the Republic Service is in Soto. You can see the little map there, and this is their facility. So all the recycling that gets collected from residential by Recology and WM, it goes to this facility and then is sorted there. In addition, we have contracts with Cedar Grove Composting and Lands Enterprises to process residential food and yard waste. And you can see here in the map that those are locations kind of regional in the region, in Maple Valley, Everett, and then Stanwood. So that's where that happens. And then the final contract that I wanted to mention is with WM. And that contract is to transport and landfill garbage. So what happens is that garbage will go into the transfer station. It gets compacted into this rail containers. It's taken to the landfill. And the landfill is in Arlington, Oregon. So it's about 300 miles from Seattle. And you know, it's well managed. It's a really well managed site. So there's materials that we want to go into the landfill, but we're going to talk about how there's materials that really we don't want them to go there. And Ashley is going to talk a little bit about that.
Great, thank you, Socorro. So like we've mentioned before, knowing how to sort can be a little bit confusing, so there's no shame in that. All of us have questions. There's things that I learn every single day about sorting, like the carrots. I had never heard that before. That's definitely new information for me. So we have these flyers, and we brought them today, so after the presentation, if you would like one of these, it has great information. So it's the one with the two lovely people on the front. Yeah, and then on the inside, it looks like this. So we have information about composting, recycling, and garbage. And we call this one our top 5 flyer because it shows just the top 5 items that we'd like you to compost, recycle, and throw away. So if you can follow just these top 5 rules, then you're doing pretty good at composting and recycling. Great. So next I'm going to go through and talk about those top 5 items that we have on this flyer. So the first one is plastic bags, wraps, and wrappers. So like Laura mentioned, we definitely don't want these plastic bags in the recycling or the compost because we don't want plastic in the compost at all. But those plastic bags also get tangled, so they cause lots of issues and we don't want them. The bubble envelopes and mailers. So these are a very common question that I get all the time when you get things delivered to you, and those like plastic, those thick plastic mailers, sometimes they have a recycle symbol on them, but they cannot be recycled in your recycling bins here, so those also have to be thrown away. And then styrofoam and foam food trays, those have to be thrown away. Diapers and pet waste, that's another one that needs to be thrown away, and it's important to have those bagged. And then the hygiene products and the personal protective equipment, so that's like your masks, your latex gloves, and other hygiene products too. Great, so now that we talked about some items that we want to be putting into the garbage, now I want to talk about what's actually being put into the garbage throughout Seattle. So Seattle Public Utilities does this study, it was every 4 to 5 years, and they tested what was inside the garbage containers at different residences throughout Seattle. So this is what they found from this study. So items that were going into the garbage bin that are actually supposed to be there, the items that are actually garbage, was only about 40%. So that's less than half of what we would want. And then 10% of those items were items that could be recycled if you had some sort of special program. So that's like the plastic film. You can take those to grocery stores and then they can be recycled. Or styrofoam, if you take them to a special facility, then that can be recycled as well. But that's a lot of extra steps, and it's not always accessible to a lot of people. So those are those items that take a little extra special care to be recycled. And then next are the items that are recyclable. So like those are the things that would be seen here on the top 5 flyer. So 20% of those items are being found in the garbage instead of in the recycling bin. And then next we have compostable items, and that includes food scraps that are non-edible, so things that we would have never been able to eat, like bones or peels that we don't eat. And then next is the 14% of that was edible food, so that doesn't necessarily mean it was edible when it was thrown away, but it was edible at some point. So like cereal, maybe that has gone bad, or other items like that. So majority of the things that are being put into the garbage are actually items that could be given a second life through composting or recycling. So that's part of the education that we're doing. We want to help people sort better so then it could be even lower. Great. Back to Socorro.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, and then before I go over, I'm just going to say, so this is a concern. This is a huge concern for us because we're putting all these materials into that train that's going, all the way to Oregon, 300 miles, and 30% of that is things that could be compostable. This is also a concern, obviously. 20% of that is recyclable, so that's an opportunity for us to talk about, let people know about this, what we're sending to the landfill, and then figure out how do we help people keep all those materials out of the landfill or divert them from the landfill. Okay, so it was great because I think Sienna and Laura already talked about this quite a bit, but the issue with food waste into the landfill is that it produces methane. And methane is a greenhouse gas responsible for global warming, so that's a huge issue. In addition, when we send recyclables to the landfill, then we're going to have to be using raw or virgin materials to make products. And so that uses more energy and produces more greenhouse emissions than if we were using those recyclables. So those are some of the environmental impacts of the green and the blue part of the pie chart that we showed. Okay, and then talking about the environmental impacts of that, first of all, for any community, any household, any business, any apartment building, is the cost of collection. So that, like Laura said, the collection of recyclables in Seattle is provided for free to residential customers. Collection of food and yard waste is really affordable, but collection of garbage is expensive. So in this case, people are paying a lot of money to deal with materials that they could have collected much cheaper. The other thing is it's a wasted resource. All these recyclables, all these compostables, they are things that have a market value. They're valuable things that we're sending to the landfill. And then job creations, it was said already. So those are some of the economic impacts. So, all throughout our, since I can remember working in Seattle Public Utilities, my predecessor, Marcia Rutan, who you probably worked with before, we're always focusing how to get rid of materials, and that has been our focus. But right now, we really need to change. We need to pivot. And so I wanted to talk to you about what's our focus going forward. So now we're starting to think about the environmental impacts of materials throughout their entire life cycle. So that means looking at them, let's see, let me go here. From extraction, manufacturing, distribution, use, and then disposal or end of life. So looking at these materials comprehensively, not just how you get rid of them, but what are their impacts throughout their whole life cycle. So disposal is relevant, but there's so many environmental impacts before disposal that we need to think about. So, so I know that's a lot, and we don't expect people to do all this research on their own to figure that out. So I wanted to share with you some information that we have so that people can be better informed as consumers what are our impacts. So I'm going to show you some kind of data or information about greenhouse gas emission inventory. So this is when you look at what's your greenhouse gas footprint, and you can look at a city or you can look at a household. But the trick with those inventories that they're done very often is normally you look at a city and you look, okay, inside the city, what are the emissions that are coming out of the city? Which, yeah, that's a good question. But the thing that those inventories ignore is what are we importing? What are the things that we're buying from outside our city, from different states or from different countries that are causing emissions there? That gets ignored in those inventories, and that's very important for large cities like us that we just, we consume quite a bit. It's really important. So, we hire somebody to make a study, and this is called a consumption-based emission inventory because it includes everything that we buy. So I'm going to show you that. How does it look for a typical Seattle household? So this is what we're showing here. You can see here, this is the metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions here. And you can see there's, I guess I cannot, this doesn't work. Okay, sorry. You can see different categories here. So we have here transportation. You can see transportation is the biggest one. But you can also drill down and see, okay, this one is gasoline. This one is air travel. So you can see a lot of detail on behaviors and what are those emissions. And then the second largest category is food here in the gray. And you can see here specifics about cereals, fruits and vegetables, alcohol, dairy, and so forth. So it has a lot of granular detail of what are the impacts of all our behaviors as consumers in the environment. And here's the link here if you want to learn more about this. This is helpful on the policy level so that we know as a city where to focus and what levers we can tweak to help. But also this is useful on a personal level because if you're interested in reducing your footprint, you can look at this and say, okay, for my lifestyle, for my household, what things I can diminish or switch or minimize. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, and kind of, I said at the beginning, I'm going to talk about the one environmental behavior that we can all do to reduce our impact in the environment. So I wanted to share with you this website. It's called Project Drawdown. And this is a bunch of scientists and engineers. And they looked at the environmental climate solutions so that greenhouse gas emissions will stop increasing, and what it will take for them to stop increasing and actually start to decrease. So they looked and they put together a list of 100 climate solutions that they exist now. Like, this is not future technology, this is solutions that exist now, and that combine, if we adopt those 100 climate solutions, we would start to see in a period of time emissions go down. So their website is great. They have this list of all the solutions. They go from like agriculture to engineering to social behaviors. But what I wanted to share with you is that the number one solution in that list is reducing food waste. That's the number one. And people don't know about this. So that's kind of our mission now, is to get that message out, that this is the number one thing that we can all do at home, which is what I put there. And so we have that information. That's great. But we also have tools to help people do that. So this is our website to tackle, to help, and where we have lots of tips on how to help people prevent food waste. So we have some little flyers of how to store your food, and we brought some here, so at the end we can distribute them. They're very handy. What's the best way to store food so that it lasts longer? And in that website, we also have information about like how to store vegetables and fruits, or how to, we have like shopping lists in case that's something that it's helpful, meal planning, tips for freezing, lots of tips there. And yeah, I think just going back to the sorting question, that just wanted to mention that if you ever have sorting questions, use the Where Does It Go website, which Laura already mentioned, and that if there's something that you don't find there, you can give us feedback. So you can let us know, hey, I'm looking for this item and I cannot find it. And if you cannot find an item, you can always email askevelyn@seattle.gov and ask about it. And that's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. I promise I'm only going to be a couple of minutes. Oh, okay. So I just want to talk about some of the additional recycling that we do in Horizon House. So if you go in your waste recycle rooms, you will see there's a container for batteries, and there's also a container for corks. Batteries isn't technically what we're collecting for recycling. It actually is considered a universal hazardous waste. We don't want to put that into the landfill. So that's why we collect those, and those get picked up by a hazardous waste company. So that's in the corks are recyclable, 100% recyclable. So we collect those. That's inside the waste recyclable along with everything else. We also have on B3, we have styrofoam. Now this is not peanuts. This is just block styrofoam, and it has to be clean. So we don't want meat trays with, stuff in there. So you just definitely want to have block styrofoam. But a lot of people do get block styrofoam because they get medications shipped to them. They need something with dry ice in them. The dry ice, not dry ice, we would pick that up for you. But if they have a packet of cooling in there, that goes in the trash. But the recyclable container would be the garbage, in landfill. We also collect Brita filters, so we ship those out to the company. We ship those for free. And we also collect ink or toner cartridges, and those also get collected on B3. I did want to mention too, B3 is the Goodwill. Please, Goodwill is a great donation, but they do want products that are usable. So we don't want to put any kind of thing. If it's something that you wouldn't give to somebody, you don't want to put it in Goodwill. So if it's so damaged that you wouldn't want to, we do have a clothing. Is it called Thread Cycle? And there's a bin next to that that's labeled Thread Cycle, and that's for clean, but not really wearable. It could be clothing, scraps, oh, I didn't know shoes went in there. Oh, I didn't know that. So it can go for shoes, belts, but are things that no one could reuse. So, so something that can't be reused. But in the Goodwill, we do want things that people could actually use. And also, it does not take furniture. But if you do have furniture that you want to get rid of and it's in good condition, we do have a process that we're just starting where you can just contact me and it will be available for staff to purchase. They have to purchase it, but for like $20. So that would be something where you're not throwing out the piece of furniture. Now, some furniture isn't really savable. That does happen, and we do need to throw that away. So furniture you don't want to take furniture down to Goodwill. I think. Oh, yes, thank you. E-waste. So we do collect e-waste as well. We don't want that in the landfill as well, and it's really not recyclable if it has electronics in it. So if you call us, we can get rid of that for you. It's on B3 as well, so if you have a laptop or something that we can get it certified to be destroyed if you'd like it, but there's some things like TVs or printers or whatever. We collect those as well, and those do get recycled by a company who collects that for free as well for Horizon House. Hazardous waste, thank you. Hazardous waste would be considered things like, well, the battery collection, also paint containers. If you have aerosols that are not dispensed, so once they're dispensed, they're fine though, but if they're not dispensed, those definitely want to be collected. Or if you have a chemical that is quite toxic. Some people do have that would be something. But if you have, like, for instance, if there's a container that uses like a kitchen all-purpose cleaner, that is not something you want to put in hazardous waste. Use it up, rinse the container, the sprayer would be thrown in the trash, and then the bottle, once it's dry, can be thrown in recycling. So we don't want to be putting, it's same thing with like laundry detergent. Once it's used up, just a simple rinse, let it dry on the counter, and then throw in the recycling. So just want to make sure that people know that there are chemicals that the container can be recycled. Not everything needs to go in the hazardous waste. Only if it's a really strong chemical. If you're unsure, give me a call. And I will definitely tell you if it needs to go in the hazardous waste or if it can be just used up and then thrown in the recycling, container in the recycling. So thank you.
Questions? Okay. Someone's over there. And over there, and over there, and over there, and over there.
My vacuum cleaner broke. What do I do with it? I mean, it's a recent vacuum cleaner. I can't take it to have it repaired, God knows where. So what do I do with it?
A vacuum cleaner would definitely be thrown in landfill. We would collect it and throw that away. We don't want to, if there's parts of it that are large pieces of plastic, that's just plastic, or large pieces, but we wouldn't be able to take it apart.
There's a lot of styrofoam filling in the package room. Why is that? And shouldn't it be thrown away? Or where do you throw it?
Styrofoam filling, if you mean like peanuts? Yes. Peanuts might be in the packaging room because people want to reuse them because they cannot be, we cannot collect them.
In the wrap room. In the wrap room, you mean? Right, in the wrap room, there are peanuts to reuse. Reuse. Okay. Oh, here's the wrap room person.
The
peanuts and the styrofoam cushions belong in the wrap room so people can use them for wrapping, padding things.
Thank you.
It's a way of reusing things.
Yes.
Composting question. Tea bags. I've been ripping off the little staple on top of my tea bags and putting them in compost. I had a feeling maybe that's the wrong thing to do. You said no tea bags.
Yeah, unfortunately, tea bags have a lot of microplastics in them. So we say the best case scenario is to, if you are able to get some scissors and dump that tea leaf material. I know it's just another extra step, but it's a great way to keep those microplastics out of the stream. So there are some certified compostable tea bags, but they're very limited and they're not really widespread on the market.
So the tea leaves themselves can come up, but the little
Correct.
bag they're in
Yep,
is not.
the tea leaves are great. It has so much nitrogen in them. It's just like coffee grounds or what have you. It's an organic, natural food waste product that we would love to have in the compost stream, but it's the tea bag itself that many of them contain microplastics.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, buy in bulk. Buy in bulk.
in our service room, the biggest problem is getting people to rinse, clean, and dry things that can be recycled. And I would just like to suggest that people just wash them, put them in their dishwasher upside down, and let them drain. I do that with tall bottles that you can't ensure that they're dry. So I just rinse it out, turn it upside down, and put it on one of the sprockets inside your dishwasher. But that's the biggest complaint on our floor, is people do not believe that breadcrumbs and frosting and yogurt it's still okay to leave it in containers.
Anna?
I'm sorry I came late. There was a mention earlier about Tetra Paks, and I think they're not good. But somebody gave me a container of soup the other day, a box with soup, and I'm like, what is that?
So Tetra Pak is a mixed material. It's paper, plastic, and usually kind of like a foily material. And we have a paper recycler that we partner with that can recycle them. So those are totally fine to put in the recycle.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
because I was thinking, when in doubt, but I could have, okay. And should I leave the lid on or take the lid off? It's plastic lid.
Yeah, so take the plastic cap off. There still will be that plastic spout there, but it's a small amount, and they're able to sort it out.
Okay. Okay. So the Tetra Paks are okay in the recycling if
Yes.
they're rinsed and dry.
Yes.
I have a few. Can you hear me? I have several questions. I hope it's okay to ask several. One thing is, you mentioned that shredded paper should not be recycled, but how about, I think I've been told compost is correct.
Yeah, I went back to my team and told them that I told all of you guys. They were accepting the compost, and they were like, "Ooh!" And the main reason about that is because of small plastics that could be in the paper. So if you think like an envelope that has a plastic window in it, that is something that, because they're already shredded, it would be really hard for us to get out of our process, So again, all clean. A lot of paper and cardboard will clog our screens. So we really want to make sure we're diverting that, and any kind of intact paper or cardboard should be gone to the recycling. But when it's shredded, there's actually specific companies that take shredded material. So we really don't want shredded paper in our compost. It's really only if it's food soiled. Yeah. And that's because of the hidden plastics.
So, Barbara, can we find somebody who'll take our shredded paper? What if people who shred, it's just the windows that's plastic? Or
A lot of
I
people
thought it was
shred a lot
cellophane.
of things.
Yeah.
They shred a lot of things. People shred credit cards, they shred, and it's just, and if you say shred can go in the compost, they may not realize, oh, right, I shredded my last page of my magazine.
Well, the
Or-
wonderful thing that we have here is that we're a big establishment, and Risa gets the big bins to shred paper, right, Risa? Is that twice a year or once a year? Once a year. So save all the paper you need shredded for the bins. And it's coming. Nancy? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. The other thing is, you mentioned no oil in compost. What about let's say bacon drippings that have been solidified? Should that go in or no?
Well, if it's solidified, then you technically it should, or it could be, but it's so easy for bacon fat to melt. So we really don't want it if it's in liquid form, and even depending on the type of year or season, it can melt really, really quickly. So that's something that we don't want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Now,
that
if it was fats from a chicken, that solid fat, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. I'm so sorry.
I'll
it's
try to
confusing.
end this. But I assume the fake wine corks aren't good. But there are these wine corks that aren't really corks.
The cork company takes the plastic. They'll take whatever kind of it has.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have one more, and I'll stop. You mentioned that facilities like ours anyone can pick up, and they may have separate requirements from where does it go, for example, the website. Did I misunderstand that? And if so, Bonnie, do we have?
I think she meant that we have the Cedar Grove compost and we have Recology. We don't have waste management, do we?
No, you don't.
They go to different places. We get a commercial composter because it's a big facility. So we're not. Some of the things were for residential or multifamily. And so, no, we just have, you saw them, they're here.
Yeah, and it's, sometimes it's like retirement communities are a bit of a hybrid. Like, it's residential, but it's commercial at the same time. So you have hybrid services. So, and that's the case for Horizon House. So when it comes to composting, your guidelines, are provided by Cedar Grove Composting because they're giving you commercial services. When it comes to recycling and garbage, you have residential services. So your guidelines are provided by SPU.
Okay.
So I know it's confusing, but it has an impact on your guidelines. So that's why I wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nancy.
In our trash rooms, on the floor is a big black container, and it says land waste. Exactly what is it for?
Land waste.
Landfill.
Landfill. Well, Barbara.
So what are we putting in that doesn't go down as garbage?
Some people have, like, for instance, it's for if somebody has gloves that they need to take off after going into the room, or that could also be used by caregivers who are leaving the room and a small amount. It's definitely for cat litter. We don't want cat litter going down the chute and exploding when it gets to the bottom, which will happen. So the cat litter should be in a bag, but then it goes into that bag as well, and then we can collect it. So that's what it's for. It's for like incidental, that we don't want people throwing incidental landfill into the recycling or into the compost. It's like, oh, I only have this one piece. I'll just throw it in the in the recycling. No. There's a little container for you.
And if you're like me and you go through the bins that are in your waste room and you see that somebody's put a bunch of snotty Kleenexes in their recycling, I take them out and put them in the landfill container.
Thank you. Okay, one more and then Nancy?
Greenware that we have in the dining room. So with the changes in the compostable containers, where does greenware stand?
Well, what is it, first of all?
It's called Greenware.
No,
and it's-
that's a company?
Yeah.
But what is the item?
Containers, food containers.
Yes, so that one I showed earlier, is that what you're talking about?
They're not clear. They're slightly green.
Okay.
I think they're the new ones that he just got.
Yep. So if they have the 3 requirements, if they are either green, brown, or beige, or have a green, brown, or beige wrap, they say compostable, and they have that third-party stamp of approval from BPI or CMA, they're great.
Yeah, I don't know that they have that
I
third
think they are.
party. I don't think they have that.
A third party yet on anything.
This
But
is, again,
it's
a relatively new law, so it could take a while for manufacturers to phase it out, but in July is when manufacturers and so the people who are supplying consumers in July, that's when we will start getting fines.
Okay.
But also there is potential for consumers like restaurants to get fined as well. So it's important that they invest in those quality items that are state compliant.
And PCC just switched over to paper bags bulk, for their bulk section that have a slight amount of coating on the inside. I don't know if you've seen these paper bags.
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and they just started doing this, so I'm wondering where those stand in terms of recyclable or compostable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question to ask. It would be great to see the item. For compostable, it has to have those requirements. So if it had if it had a coating that was probably polylactic acid, like cornstarch, it should say that it is compostable. But if it's a paper product and it's just a paper product, then if it's clean, dry, it can be recycled, or if it's used for food, it can be composted. So it really just depends what is on the item and what it's being identified as.
Right.
And
Or it might be just shiny paper.
I can show it to you if you want to stick around. And I have one last question for Barbara, and this is just to clarify for residents who have confusion about recycling when they are pre-sorting in their apartment. Some people pre-sort by putting their recyclables in a paper bag and then taking it to the waste recycle room and putting that paper bag with all the recyclables in it into the bin. And I want you to clarify for people whether that's okay or whether they need to dump it out of the paper bag.
No, you can leave it in the bag as long as it's clean and dry, because the paper bag itself is also recyclable.
Right.
It's
Except our sign says loose.
It is loose. It's in a paper bag. It's not, there's nothing attached to each other. They're not attached to each other.
If it falls over, they'll think it'll spill out.
Yeah, so from like the Recology point of view, yeah, the paper bag is totally fine. Like Sierra just said, it would kind of fall out. The plastic bag is what we really want to avoid, and usually that would be like tied up. So, yeah.
We're going to have to call it a day. You've stayed much longer. I hope none of you others are going to be late for your next program. Thank you all for staying. I think we're probably going to have a conversation with Barbara Brown another time that's longer with Barbara Brown. Okay, thank you all.